Welcome to the Martin Bailey Photography Podcast. It's Christmas Eve 2021 and this is episode 764. If you have ever considered getting into real estate photography, this episode is for you. Today I am very happy to bring you a conversation with Rich Baum and Brian Berkowitz, both successful real estate photographers and educators. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. So gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having us, Martin.
Been looking forward to talking for the last few weeks when we got together and started to arrange this. And you both work in real estate photography, which is an area I have virtually no experience in. So I'm looking forward to picking your brains on that. But also I'm because it's an area that I've not really spoken about on the podcast, it's going to be great for the listeners as well. So thanks for agreeing to come on today. And I'm looking forward to jumping in and getting started. So, I understand, obviously you're both real estate photographers, probably got your fingers in other pies as well, which we might touch on. But how did each of you, before the real estate, let's start with Rich. How did you get into photography to begin with?
Well, Martin, thanks for having us on. And I go way back to 1968. I got my first camera.
Wow.
And I'm an old guy, but I was shooting film and did a little serious work, but I've been shooting most of my life. I then spent most of my career in the movie industry in the art department, prop master. And then I ended up about 16 years ago, I decided to get out of the business, and I was going around with different options for jobs and for make a living. And I went back to photography. And when I became back to going photographer, I realized that I had to learn everything I can about photography and shoot everything I could shoot, every genre, every opportunity. So as we all know, you need to make a living, and it's not the easiest, but if you can shoot different genres well professionally, you've opened up a whole can of worms as far as an opportunity. And then I would shoot sports, weddings, models, you name it. And I really enjoyed shooting what we call shooting spaces or buildings. And I started shooting real estate, resorts, buildings, architecture, you name it. And that's kind of been my area of not necessarily expertise, but my area of focus, especially with my educational aspects of what I do. And that's kind of why I do the real estate, because it's challenging. It's much more challenging than many of your listeners might think. But if you get a chance to do it, you'll see it's pretty tricky. A lot of tips and tricks and different kinds of things. But that's kind of my story. And I've been doing real estate photography now for almost, 14 years, I think. So
okay, excellent. So I guess when you came back and really started to work in photography again, then you'd been working with film in the past, and then all of a sudden you'd got digital to contend with. So I'm sure that was a lot of fun.
Well, it was very exciting, and I got my first digital Canon A1, I think it was. 2 megapixels, 1 or 2 megapixels. When my son was born in 1999, and that was my intro into digital. And then I think I really got serious more about it about 2005. So, yeah.
Excellent. So Brian, how about you? Where do your photography roots come from?
So I was actually brought up with it. My father's a wedding photographer. So
okay.
Yeah, so I grew up with photography, I guess you can say, in my blood. I started assisting my father on weddings when I was about 10 years old. So about 1990, 1991, give or take. So someone can do some math and figure out my age. But yeah, I've been, if you want to consider, I started at about 10. I've been in the photography industry for roughly about 30 years, and which is pretty crazy considering my age. But obviously, while I was, 10 and through high school, I was just assisting on weddings. But I did end up going to school for photography and film, working weddings, working through different wedding studios, working as a retoucher for design houses in New York City, all while I was in college and all that stuff. And back in, right after I graduated college, I ended up working as a retoucher in a digital house in New York City. And I wasn't really shooting at that point. I was doing that about 5-6 years. And then in 2009, the recession here in the US hit, and I got laid off from the job. So obviously, I always had photography to fall back on. I was brought up with it. I had a lot of my old wedding connections that I grew up with, and I got back into weddings. And it was a way for me to go from making a salary to making nothing to at least bringing something in. You know, it was literally a couple of months after I got married where I got laid off. So got back into weddings, and I actually ended up shooting spaces, to quote Rich. Ended up shooting spaces by accident. One of the wedding studios I worked for had an interior design client that was looking for a photographer. And he said to me, this was probably around 2011, 12, 13, give or take, when, you know, HDR and Photomatics and Trey Radcliffe was like the hottest thing, when it was just coming about and everyone was all gung-ho about it. And I was obviously following the train like everyone else. And this wedding photographer, this wedding studio that I worked for at the time, said to me, I see you dabbling with this HDR stuff. I have an interior design client who needs some shots. I've never done it before. I know you've never done it before, but do you want to give it a try? And I went out and I did, and fell in love. And that was it. So at that point, my first job was actually an interior design job rather than real estate. But then at that point, I started doing some research online and figuring out, you know, what this side of the industry was all about. And I actually came across Rich on YouTube because he has so much educational material out there. Started learning as much as I could. And that transitioned into me shooting some residential real estate, which I did for several years, and then eventually transitioned to sort of where I am now.
Wow, excellent. That's a lot of great history from both of you there. I heard, you know, obviously how you both got into the shooting spaces. Tell me a little bit about more about how that became a business. You know, how did you, and either of you jump in here, but how did you really sort of decide that the shooting the spaces was going to be a way to make a living?
So, you know, it's funny because when I first started doing research, and like I said, I've been in the industry at that point for over 20 years. I didn't even know that real estate photography was a thing. And I think most real estate photographers would tell you the same. And most photographers in other genres might even tell you the same, that they didn't even know that real estate photography was a thing. But the more and more research I was doing at that point, this is probably circa 2012, 13, maybe 14, around that time, you know, I came across a blog, which is photographyforrealestate.net, which is one of the biggest blogs out there for educational material for real estate photographers. And they had literally, correct me if I'm wrong, Rich, thousands or tens of thousands of articles geared towards every aspect of the real estate photography industry. And I was just reading about people that were making really good livings, and obviously it was a hustle, but making really good livings, and, you know, getting home at 5-6 o'clock at night, normal times. And, you know, when I was shooting weddings, I was working Friday night, Saturday, Sunday. So I was like, all right, this is something that I have to look into and see if I'm able to normalize my schedule at this point and make this a thing, you know. And for me also, I grew up with a father as a wedding photographer, and my first son was born in 2014. And I knew what it was like for me as a kid. And I said to myself, I can't do that to my kids. So I need to find an outlet in photography where I can stay busy during the day, during the week, and hopefully be home on the weekends.
Yeah, I was thinking as you were talking about your childhood earlier, how wedding photography is probably one of the most stressful types of photography, or not so much stressful, but high pressure. There's a lot, you know, you've got to get the shots, and you being in there as an assistant with your father on those kind of shoots probably gave you pretty good, you know, foundation to take you to where you are today. So it must have been a good education at the same time as being pretty stressful as a kid.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, not even wedding photography, but, you know, as I think, Rich, you touched on this earlier, just shooting as much as you can from different genres of photography, no matter what it is, even, the type of landscape work you do, Martin. I think all those experiences help you ultimately at the end, come up with your look and help you succeed as a photographer in the genre that you ultimately want to go out and shoot and call, this is what I do for a living.
And absolutely. I had a guy email me earlier this week. I have an iPhone app that for depth of field and everything. And he emailed me about hyperfocal distance, and he was trying to get his head around it. And at the end of, we had a relay, but at the end of the conversation, I said, the thing is, though, take consolation in the fact that the more you do this, the easier it gets. And there will become a time when you've done it so much that it all becomes second nature. The tools, the education tools, and I know we're going to talk about some of the education services that you guys are providing as well, but they're tools to help us to get to a certain point where we don't use the tools anymore. We just do it. And as you've both touched on, it's so important to just shoot, and develop that muscle memory that we start to rely on. So, hyperfocal distance is not really something I think about so much while I'm actually shooting now, but it was a very important part of getting my head around, how I'm going to shoot in the future. So shoot, as they say.
Well, like there's, I always call it, I've actually been given a hard time for saying I call it tips and tricks, because a lot of several photographers in my career have said, "Oh, you shouldn't say tricks. It's not tricks. It's well planned out this and that." Well, that's very true. But there are certain things, there's certain aspects that cross over between all genres of photography, but there are very many things that are very specific to shooting architecture or real estate or shooting buildings. When you say hyperfocal distance, I think it's absolutely something that every photographer should know and at least understand, whether you want to use it or not, but you at least know what it is. And for what we shoot, where I'm always on a full frame for real estate, I'm always at f8, and everything with my wide angle lens is basically, you can find out what you can use the calculator, as you said, find out what's in focus. And for me at f8 with my 16 to 35, usually it's 16 millimeters, 18 millimeters, everything from 3 feet to infinities in sharp. So, I do set focus, but I also have a manual lens, a Samyang 12 millimeter on a crop sensor. So that's 18, the equivalent of 18 millimeters on a full frame. And I set it, I tape down the focus, and I never have to adjust focus because I know on a crop sensor, f7.1, everything from 3 feet to infinity at 18 millimeters is sharp. And that's a really wonderful thing for me because I never have to focus that lens.
Yeah.
At least if I'm shooting at f7.1. So anyway, a lot of technical stuff right there.
Yeah, but so that's really what I'm thinking. That those numbers, where you are, so you can just the fact that you can just tape it down and go ahead. That takes one extra decision away. You don't need to do it. So it's those numbers are golden, and getting those sometimes, especially in the beginning, can take a little while, but people do get it. And so it's great once you get to the point where you can stop thinking about that stuff.
But I will add that also, every room their houses are houses, and there are usually very similar houses. The houses you shoot or the apartments you shoot, Martin, if you were to shoot houses, might be different in Japan, but they're all very similar, and every house has similar bedrooms and similar layouts. But every house is different, and very often we're dealing with different colors, different color temperatures from lights, different sizes, which affect the amount of light power we need. So it is a challenge, and it never stops being a challenge. The only real thing that I think that we have is we have a big bag of tricks, which I think everybody in photography should have a bag of tricks. And I'm pulling stuff out of my maybe my butt or my bag, but it is definitely something I'm constantly doing. I'm pulling from my resources, but I'm trying to figure out. It's basically just a puzzle. I've got to figure out how to put those pieces together.
And just to add to that, Rich and I might shoot similar properties, but every photographer has different workflows and different techniques, different ways of shooting, which present their own challenges. And I know Rich and I, the way we shoot, because we know each other for so many years. Rich shoots with flash, and I shoot primarily 97 to 98% natural light. So that being said, we're both shooting real estate, but each of the different techniques that we shoot come with their own similar challenges. So it's just a matter of being able to handle those, or me knowing when I've reached my limit with the natural light and I have to go pull out a flash and use it, and work that way.
So Brian, you've both talked about challenges there. What about the pandemic? I'm sure that's been a challenge for your business. Tell us a little bit about how you've handled that.
It's funny because you would think so, and I think Rich would agree with me. 2020 was my best year to date of business, despite the pandemic. And it did slow down for me in 2021 a little bit, but compared to 2020. But and I don't know how it was there for you, but here in New York, I think everything started around March of 2020, which is when we really got hit here in New York bad. And it was bad. I mean, New York was the epicenter of the US for a good 3-4 months, where everything completely shut down. Now, the good thing was, I guess around May time, which was 2 months after the pandemic hit, our governor declared that real estate and vendors of the real estate industry were considered essential and could continue to work. So what that did was it allowed me to apply for a waiver of essential business. And they didn't grant them to everybody, but I was one of the first to apply, and I got lucky and I got granted. So I only was really shut down for about 6 to 7 weeks where I wasn't doing anything. And then all of a sudden, once I reached out to all my clients and I told them, hey, I know you're continuing to try to sell properties because you're allowed, according to what the governor said. I got a waiver. I'm allowed to shoot for you. I'm one of the few here in New York, or in my region of New York, that can. Let's keep going. And things just took off and things went booming. And even more specifically for me, most of my real estate work at this point is commercial. So I don't really shoot so much residential anymore. And the pandemic, unfortunately, but again, I guess a silver lining for me was that all these businesses in New York City were being shut down and being vacated. And all these businesses were either trying to sublease their spaces, either shutting down, unfortunately, or trying to get out of their space. So for someone who shoots commercial real estate, I mean, my phone kept ringing and ringing and ringing, which is great for me. But, it obviously took a really bad economic toll on the city here. But yeah, for me in the industry, I'm in 2020 was a really good year for me.
Wow. And so, Rich, how about you on the West Coast? Were you in a similar position? How was it? How did it affect you?
Well, actually, March 2020, I live in the winter. I live in Mexico, and I was in Mexico, Baja California. And I remember coming out of yoga, and I got a cup of coffee in my hand, and someone said, oh my God, check out the stock market. And I don't look at the stock market that often, but I took my phone, checked out the stock market, and it was crashing. And I'm like, I told my wife, I said, I was supposed to go home in a week in March to get back to my work in California. I told my wife, I don't think anybody's going to be buying. I don't think I even need to leave. I don't think anybody's going to be buying anything. And I found that, all our weddings got canceled. All of my Spartan races, my marathons got canceled. But I went home, and for 2 weeks, I even applied and got the pandemic assistance, which we had in California and many places in the United States. And 2 weeks from the day I got back, I became an essential worker in California. And we didn't have to sign anything that I know of. But anyway, long story short, that was the beginning of a very big, not my busiest year, but almost my busiest year. And for 2 years, and it's still going on, the prices, the business was crazy in California. The prices went up. There was just it was psycho, and it's just an amazing thing. And then we did other things too that also increased our revenue. We were able to start adding on 360 photography. That's the virtual, you can walk through a house and click, because people were not going out to see houses. So that was a really interesting thing there. we were wearing masks. I was very safe, and in a way, it was really great too because I would tell the agent, I can't have anybody in the house. Nobody can be there. Not even you. Leave me there. I'll close up or whatever. And in that respect too, we never like shooting when people are there if we can avoid it, especially homeowners. But that was another benefit there, and it was just a blessing in disguise.
Wow.
And I will say in the industry in general, for people that are interested in statistics and things like that, those statistics as far as being busy, I think, Brian, if I'm not mistaken, probably everybody did very well in the last 2 years because
in the real estate industry,
partially
I think
because of COVID, and the prices went crazy, and it was just a blessing in disguise. And COVID's a terrible thing, and it's still going on though, especially now with the new variant and everything, and even down here in Mexico, it is front and center, man. It is just the COVID thing. How's it going in Japan, Martin?
I think
shutting down business though, shutting down photography.
Not a lot of businesses are really unaffected. The Japanese government have never really. They don't have the power to lock Japan down. It's all a request base. But because in Japan people are. They're very much group oriented. So if one person decides that there are photos of Japan from the Spain flu era 100 years ago when they all started wearing masks, and so there's no, even in daily life here without a pandemic, a lot of Japanese people wear masks just to prevent themselves getting the flu. So the mask thing has been a big thing here, and I think that there are things like taking our shoes off when we go into a building. In most Japanese homes, you take your shoes off at the door. So if you've trodden on a sneeze, you're not going to walk that into the house. You're going to walk it into the doorway, and it stays there. So there's a number of things about the Japanese society and culture that have helped the numbers to be relatively low. We haven't really. We had the biggest peak or wave was the previous summer. Probably the end of spring or so this year, but we were down to like nationally under 200 patients per day for the last maybe eight to 10 weeks. The Omicron strain has got a grip, but we're talking like 5 to 10 new cases per day still. So, and we'll get the sixth wave, and it will be big. And I mean, my business is in shreds because my business has the majority of the work that I do has been tours. And so I'm either, I had three tours each winter where 14 participants from all around the world gather in Japan. They have had to be cancelled for 2 years in a row. I can't do those in January, February again because people can't get here. My next tours after those are in Namibia, which is like one of the countries in Southern Africa that's just been locked down. So I'm sort of in a bit of a mess as far as the tour revenue is concerned, but it's given me more time to work on things like I do plugins and software and stuff. And so that side is picking up to the point where it's just about keeping a roof over our head. But, it's been tough. But again, I as a business owner, because I enjoyed the tours and because they're relatively lucrative, it's been, I made that the center pole of the business. And I actually stopped doing most of the commercial work that I had been doing because I was getting tired of trying to educate people into the worth of the photographers, So I put myself in a position to be hit hard by it, and it's my own fault in a way. But it's been good in that I've had more time to spend with my wife. She doesn't have to spend the whole winter alone now. So hopefully not next year, 2022, 2023 will be better. I can't believe that it's taken 2 years to get to this point, and we're probably looking at least another year or so of this before it starts to really settle down. So We'll see how it pans out. Luckily, I'm not a poor photographer. I've got savings to help me get by this. So you're obviously, we've talked about your challenges. What I think I'll do now is you've kindly sent me a number of images which I'm going to pull up on my screen. I'd love you to just talk me through some of this. I'm going to start with the images that you sent over, Rich. So obviously beautiful work. I can see straight away that you're at the top of your game here. Tell us a little bit about the images that are on the screen, and I will embed these in the blog post. It will be at mbp.ac/764. But tell us a bit about this image, and sort of any tips that you have for shooting this sort of work as well.
Sure thing, Martin. This is a very typical. I will say, this is a very nice house. So I shoot anywhere from, I would say, shacks to mansions, and everything in between. And it's funny how you can shoot with one agent that does multi-million-dollar houses, and every so often she'll do a place for 400,000, and you just got to treat them all the same way. Shoot your best you can. But this is a shot. It's not super ultra wide. That's one thing I'd like to impress to your listeners. If you're going to start shooting wide, don't go crazy wide. You don't have to. You got to, you can be selective, and it's a little tough at the beginning. And usually I would say, if you're going out to get a lens, go get something like a 16-35 on a full frame. And, I don't think you want to shoot much wider on a full frame than 16 millimeters. I don't think you even need to shoot that. 18 is good too. But you're trying to sell. What are we selling here, Martin? We're selling the countertop. We're selling I'm showing, I will also do shots of just the island, just the kitchen, and I'll do 2 or 3 shots of the kitchen. But I also want to show the dining room in the background, or the breakfast nook in the background, that shows the relationship. And I want to show the window, and I want to have the window well exposed. And I want to also, in this shot, I want to be able to see the beams up above, because those are valuable pieces of property. You want the island. I want to make sure that all of these chairs are straight and in line. These are things you got to look at. When you start off, you're overwhelmed. So you're just trying to get the settings all set. But you also have to look at fluff the pillows or move the chairs, make them all right if you can. You want to declutter. You want to, get rid of some too much stuff there. If it was showing a refrigerator, you don't want to show all the sticky notes or the magnets on the refrigerator. But all these things come into play. I'd also say that in general, at least in the United States, where we shoot MLS, multiple listing service, and that you want to, most of the time when you're shooting MLS, you want to have a horizontal image because it displays better on the internet or in the MLS. So these are just some tips. But you also want to get your vertical straight. You want to make sure that your walls are not curved in or curved out, which is a term called keystoning. So if you point your camera up, they angle in. If you point them down, they angle out. So you just want to get everything vertical, which means you get your camera level. And these are all just little tips, and there's dozens more. So, that's one thing that really helps with our courses. We go into Brian's course is a little more advanced than mine in some ways. But mine, I start from the very beginning, trying to explain what the things are you need to look out for. And the most important rule of all, make sure that your toilet seat is down.
Yeah. That's one of the most important rules in my house, period. I do workshops here, and occasionally there'll be someone that comes along and leaves the toilet seat open. My wife is like, "You've got to tell him, just put the toilet seat down." I say, "No, he's a guest, we'll leave it, but I'll put the toilet seat down."
And you can use your foot to put it down, because we don't like touching toilet seats. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, okay. They have toilets here that have sensors in, and they open the seat for you when you go into the room here in Japan. It's crazy stuff. So here's a bedroom shot. Tell us about this. Is there anything particular about bedroom shots that you keep in mind, or the same rules apply?
Well, I really like this shot. I remember I took this recently, and it's a spec home, and that's a single point composition. There's a term, if everybody out there is not familiar, I'd urge you to look up the term single point or one point composition. These terms go way back into painting. Leonardo da Vinci and such, Rembrandt and such all did single points.
And Stanley Kubrick.
Stanley Kubrick and
in his
motion picture.
Yeah.
But I'm also using a term called the rule of thirds, and it's not perfect rule of thirds, but it's pretty close, where the bed is the subject and it's in the bottom right third of the image. But I want to show here a single point. And when you're a little tip for your listeners, when they're doing a single point, you not only have to do your vertical straight, you got to get your horizontal straight. So you got to line your camera up perfectly. It's really important. And it's a little tricky at first, but after a while, you'll get it completely down. But I really like this picture because I wanted to show out the windows, and I didn't want to get a completely blue view. I wanted it just like this. I enjoy, too, the light streaming in on the floor, which is maybe not something which would be another photographer's cup of tea. Some agents don't like light and shine on floors, but I liked it on this. And so I'm just trying to also, I'm using lighting in this, and I'm exposing for the brightest thing in the room, which happens to be the windows, but it almost could be the light above the bed. You want to control that. So I'm raising my shutter speed up. I'm shooting in manual, and I'm raising my shutter speed up. And that means when I raise it up, everything gets very dark. So then I need to put in a light to bring up the interior exposure to match the exterior exposure. And again, I go through all that in depth in the course, but it's just an appealing composition, I think, and something that I'm really happy with. There's a very nice house, and when you get to shoot really, really nice houses, it's such a pleasure. But when you finally get to the point where I will go shoot any house, no matter how big, I may do better job on some than others, but I'm not worried that I'm not going to botch it. I know enough that I don't get nervous before I go to a house. I may get prepared and bring extra lights and such, but I think Brian's the same way too. We get to a point where at the beginning you're kind of nervous. I don't know if I could do this. I hope it turns out. I don't make mistakes. But after a while, and you do it long enough over and over, you just get pretty good at it.
So do you use light modifiers? I imagine you've got your flashes off camera. Are you using light modifiers at all?
That is a really interesting question, Martin. And whereas for all those people out there that use lights shooting people, shooting many things, you're pointing your lights, or you could be using modifiers, but you're pointing your lights usually at someone, or you're pointing them backwards and bouncing it at someone. What I do is I do not personally use modifiers 99% of the time. I bounce my lights straight up off the ceiling. And I used to use umbrellas, but I almost never use them anymore because I've learned more tricks that I don't need to. Real estate photography is about speed and efficiency. And I find that the ceiling of this room, let's say a white ceiling, it is the best bounce modifier you could possibly have. But you get tricky when you start having red roofs, brown wood roofs, and things like that is where you have to start pulling out those tricks out of your bag. So, but I don't use modifiers. I almost don't use modifiers at all. And none of us use things like soft boxes because they're just too big and cumbersome to get through doors and to be as efficient and fast as we want.
Okay, excellent stuff. So is this all one house?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, look at that. It goes back. It's sprawling. It's amazing.
Yes, it's
tell us
bigger
about
than
this.
you see, though. It's quite a bit bigger than you see.
I can imagine.
You know what? This is a trick. This is a trick photo. I personally shoot my twilight photography, which, by the way, get your agents to get good at twilight photography and get your agents to value and understand that twilight photos are the closers. twilight photos is what gets your potential buyer to stop for 3 seconds or 5 seconds on one image instead of click, 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 click. And this is a single exposure. This is no lights used here. I am shooting at the proper time. That is a fake sky. So I personally do a lot of sky replacements because you don't always get a beautiful sky. So once you understand and learn to do sky replacements, then you don't worry about it, which was a big load off of me. But I specialize in twilight photography. Brian, I'm sure, does a lot of twilight photography. And I think that when you learn to do it, and this is an extreme example, this was a pretty nice house, but you learn to do it, you can really get a lot out of a single raw image processed in Lightroom. And adding little bits of light pops with the adjustment brush in Lightroom for exposure. And you know what? You get good at it, and it's actually pretty easy. But twilight photography is all about the timing. It's all about making sure you're getting the right exposure inside the house, and it's about having all the lights on in the house. Those are the things, and hopefully you have, like this house had a lot of yard lights, which really help. But sometimes we have yards with no lights, so we got to make it so you get a good result every time.
So I imagine if you're driving along and you see a great sky, you jump out of the car and just grab the sky then, so that you can use it in your compositions. Was that the
Absolutely,
case?
Martin.
Yeah.
I've taken sky replacements with my phone, or skies, and then we call it as a sky library. And there's various places to get sky libraries. I have my own sky library. We have a friend that is Jordan Powers, who has got a sky library that is absolutely insane from all over the world.
Wow.
And you want to try and hopefully get the right angle of sunset if you can, where you want the sky facing that you're going to use facing one way or the other. And you just you start looking at life through you're looking at going, when you shoot anything, when I look at anything in life, I'm looking through a lens, something like that. So,
yeah. So this next one with the beautiful, looks like a collection of stringed instruments in the wall. Tell us about this.
Well, first of all, I was very disappointed because I'm a mandolin player. And when I talked to the owner, he goes, "Oh, no, I don't play at all.
Oh, wow.
Collect them." So anyway, and this is a vertical shot. I really like this because I wanted to show the coffered ceiling up on the top with the beams and everything. Those are valuable parts to this. I wanted to show the piano, and I made sure that the piano was open. And I actually wanted the piano top open like that because it's hiding a barbecue in the backyard.
Okay.
I didn't want to show that.
Trick.
But this is a vertical shot, and my agent that I'm working for here, though this is real estate and MLS, she really likes me to do artistic shots. And so vertical shots sometimes give you a better look. And some agents like it, some agents don't. But this was a really tough because you got to understand, if you're bouncing off of the wood ceiling, it's not like white. It's it eats and sucks a lot of light out of your lights, a lot of power out of your lights. So you got to come in sometimes. In a house like this, I have two 600-watt lights, and these are all battery powered now. We don't use heads, and we don't use electric heads. We use, like the old days, where now everything is like Godox and flashpoint lights. We use battery powered lights. But I did this, and it's actually very easy and very quick once you get it down. And we also do things called window pulls, where this window view, I use a separate exposure, and we do it. And I show that in my course, but I do it in a way that we don't even have to select the window. We just overexpose everything around the window and paint in the proper exposure. And in darken mode in Photoshop, a lot of technical stuff there, but a little tip and trick that makes it absolute magic when you got to do this room after room after room after room.
Yeah, I can imagine it's a big job to get that right in every building and every room that you shoot.
Yeah.
Another beautiful home. Another beautiful. Is this the same building as the last image, or?
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
actually the
Okay.
room next to the other room,
Okay.
and
I thought the wood looked
something
similar.
recently I shot. Yeah,
Mm.
but basically in this one, it's just a kitchen, and I wanted to keep it a little tighter than now. I probably also shot this kitchen much wider, so I wanted to get more of a real estate look. But my look also is to try and give, along with a wide look, I want to give more of a designer look, and this is what I think I've got. I'm trying to show the lights above the counter, so that's how wide I want to be. I want to make sure that the chairs are lined up again. Everything looks good, and I'm exposing for the windows. Got a little funky colors out the windows, but I'm okay with it. You know, somebody might look at that and goes, "You didn't do a great job there." I'll cop on there, but it's okay, and I'm pretty happy with it. And it's just a really difficult room to shoot. It sucked light. Like you can't even believe. But no, you learn tricks and tips and tricks, and you can make anything work. You just have to know how to do it. And after 25,000 homes, no, after probably about 15,000 homes and 12, 13, 16, 15 years or so, you learn a lot of tricks. So, you know.
Yeah. Wow. And
Cool
living room here, lounge, and this is another beautiful one.
Yeah, I like this one. And this is a little narrower too than most of my MLS stuff. But an important thing, I again want to show the same house as I showed the kitchen earlier. I want to show those beams, really important feature. The fire in the fireplace is actually a fake fire. Not my best job in the world, but it does the trick. I want to make sure the pillows are fluffed. I want to make sure everything is set the way I want. So it's like shooting a model. Before you shoot the model, you want to make sure there's no hair in her eyes, so we don't have to Photoshop out the hair in her face. You know what I mean, Martin?
Yeah.
And you know, you feel my pain. But we want to make sure that the pillows are right. We want to make sure we didn't leave something in the scene. We want to make sure I move the table. Sometimes what looks good to the camera doesn't look good to the eye. You've got to move it to camera. And I've got a nice exposure out the window. I like the foreground elements of the table. A little bit too much couch there, but I wanted to include the wall. In a perfect world, I would have maybe moved the couch back, so I'm not seeing so much of this side of the couch. But you know what? I'm okay with it. You do see a little perspective issues where these couches are probably the same width, but the one next to camera looks much wider than the one further away. And that's because we're shooting with wide angle lenses, and it's just something we deal with. So,
I like the fact that you've got those books on the table as well. Give it a sort of a lived-in feel. It helps the viewer to sort of place themselves in the scene a little bit, I imagine.
Well, this was staged, really, really nicely staged. This was a really expensive house on a golf course. And yes, I will probably, though, have touched all the things on the table to move them to camera. And I'm also shooting tethered, so I can see what I'm doing. I can walk around the room and see what my camera sees on my iPad. That way I can go out in the scene and I can move things to camera and I can see it. And I shoot tethered on every shot, every single shot.
That's interesting. I mean, now I'm using mirrorless cameras, so I'm looking at a two-dimensional version of the scene anyway. But even when I was shooting DSLRs, I used to enjoy using live view because you're looking at the final photo. You're not looking at a 3D scene. You're looking at a two-dimensional representation of it. And that's what you're doing with the iPad. You're looking at the final photo. And I think that really helps us to see all of the elements in the final form, as opposed to, our eyes. If you're looking through a visual viewfinder and you can actually see the 3 dimensions of the scene, our brains do things to hide stuff. So that's interesting that you do that. It's a great. It
frees me up to go out in the scene. I can actually go out in that room in the hallway and have a light there, and I could then click the camera, trigger the camera. I don't have to walk back to the camera, take the picture, look at it, and then go back to that room.
That's another great tip.
It's a magical thing, tethering to me.
Excellent. So that was your images there, Rich. Brian, you sent me some shots as well. Can you tell us a little bit? Can you tell us a little bit about these?
Sure. Yeah. It doesn't look like I sent as many as Rich, but my shots are all commercial. As I briefly mentioned earlier, I would say about 95% of my real estate work is commercial real estate versus residential. So I think this year, as 2021 is winding to a close, I think I shot just about 20 residential real estate properties
Mm.
versus almost close to 100 commercial properties. So the discrepancy is pretty big. And I kind of made that transition mostly during the pandemic, kind of, I guess, helped push me into that transition into shooting mostly commercial. So this was, and all the images that I sent you are actually images from my course directly.
Mm.
So stuff that I recently shot, and people can learn how I shot these, and my philosophy and my mindset when I was looking for these. But this is basically a retail store that was for rent or for lease in the mall. And the point of this shot, what I wanted to show, obviously, is just an exterior of the shot. But what's pretty neat about this shot, which I wanted to focus on, is that there's two separate entrances. And most retail stores do not have two entrances. They just have an entrance in the front. And
Mm.
this has a separate side entrance right when you come out or go into the mall. And I felt that that was an important element to show for a potential tenant, that there's extra foot traffic, not just walking in front of the store, but you also have that extra foot traffic going in and out the main entrance of the mall.
Mm.
So the idea here was, and I did shoot a secondary shot of just the main space, kind of a 1 point, as Rich touched on before, straight on. But I did want to focus on showing the main entrance to the mall and showing that extra entrance there, and that extra foot traffic, because, especially in commercial spaces or commercial retail spaces, foot traffic is key. And the more foot traffic you get, the more valuable your space is.
Mm.
So having that extra entrance there in the shot was key for me.
Mm. This would be a great place to have a gallery. Probably
Yeah.
the economics wouldn't work, but it looks like a nice space. So how about this second one?
Yeah, so this was also an exterior of an office building, and in this building in my course, I just shot a ton of building amenities. So I shot a lobby, I shot a conference room, I shot the parking garage, all different amenities that potential tenant to this place would want to know about. And obviously, it was important to show the full building. And I actually did a shot from across the street from this angle, which was the same side of the street as the building was on, and it didn't have the same flare. So I came back here across the street and showed the street. And I thought it was good to show just, a main thoroughfare. I chose to show a building in the background to show that it was in downtown. And, this was a small town we shot in. This was in Mankato, Minnesota. So it's not a very big town, relatively speaking, but having a few of those buildings in the background showed that this building was in downtown. And I think the sheer size of it was pretty neat. There's some pretty cool architecture going on, a lot of curves, a lot of straight lines. So, and it looks nice. It's modern, it's clean. So, and you can see there's some terraces on the first and second floor. So I think the goal here was just to show all the different features that some potential tenant coming into this building, they can see all the different features available, whether it's the retail space in the front or an office on the inside. This is the type of building that you'd want if you're an attorney, for instance, and this is the building you're renting a space in. This is the type of building that you'd want your clients to come see you in and represent yourself as.
When you
got that rule of thirds going on there, Brian. That's a nice composition. I really like that.
So when you're hired for a job, Brian, do the people that hire you often give you like a shot list, or are you left to your own devices on that?
So I'm usually left to my own devices, but I always make sure to say to my client, whether it's the agent or it's the building owner, whoever it is, do you want me to just do my thing? Which usually they say yes, but I always ask them if there's specific features or amenities that are crucial for them to use in marketing the property for lease or for sale or whatever the transaction is. So if they tell me, for instance, in this building, yes, we have a gorgeous, beautiful lobby, even though, let's say, suite 205 on the second floor is the one they're trying to lease out, but they say the lobby of this building is gorgeous, or yeah, there's a fitness center in the basement, which that's not nothing to do with suite 205 we're trying to rent, but it's good for potential tenants to know there's a fitness center in the basement. Get that. I wouldn't have known otherwise unless they told me that. So because I'm going into the building and I'm going to suite 205 and I'm shooting that. So I always make sure to ask if there's anything besides the actual space themselves, any amenities or anything else that they want to make sure that I cover for them to market this property properly.
Excellent. Good stuff. And this last one, what about this? Is the common cafe? That's
yeah.
Cool.
So this was a space. This was the last space we did, and this was a co-working space. And I don't know if it's the same for you in Japan, but in the United States, co-sharing or co-working spaces are popping up all over the place, especially in New York, and I'm sure, Rich, the same for you in the West Coast in California. I mean, it's the hottest thing, and it only makes sense. If you have a small business with 3 or 4 employees, why do you need to rent a 2,000 square foot space? All you need is 3 desks in a little corner somewhere, and you're good to go. So co-working spaces are bumping up all over. And for a commercial real estate photographer, that's a huge niche, because these agents need to get out and get these desks rented. It's not necessarily a space, but it's a desk. And in those type of shoots, which I do a lot of, the amenities are even more important than anything else, because a desk is a desk, but they're trying to sell people on, these common cafes or the conference rooms that these co-sharing or these co-working spaces have, or whatever else they have. So this was a space, this is the cafe, where it's almost like a self-checkout. There's a refrigerator, there's a coffee machine. If you see, there's a little iPad in the back. And, if you rent desk space here, you can come in, you can lounge here. This little desk on the right on the side is the reception. You actually come to this building, walk down these stairs, and this is a little reception desk. And, you can sit in this little area. You can lounge if you want to take a break. You can come up here, grab a drink, grab a coffee, grab a sandwich, and it's all self-checkout. So you don't have to speak to anybody or deal with anybody. I guess it runs on the honor system, and go back into your office. So this was just a shot of the common cafe amenity in this co-sharing space.
Wow, excellent stuff. So we've looked at a total of probably 10 images there, and we're actually not far from an hour. So I don't want to keep you guys much longer. What I want to do is, you've given me lots of great tips already. So maybe, Brian, is there one thing that if someone that wants to get into real estate photography, what's the one tip that you would give them?
Starting out, the obvious one is just learn as much as you can. Because it's an obvious tip, obviously. So that wouldn't be my real estate photography tip, but learn as much as you can. Go to Rich's YouTube channel. It's funny that we're business partners now, because I learned a lot of what I started learning from Rich. But yes, obviously learn as much as you can, and just keep shooting. And it's easy to learn how to do real estate photography, because you don't need to learn on a paid job. We all live in a house. We all live somewhere. Yeah. Shoot your own house. Go knock on your neighbor's door. Hey, I'm practicing this. Can I shoot your house? And then call your cousin and go shoot their house, because we all know so many people in our inner circles that have so many different types of houses. You can keep shooting and practicing and getting better to the point where you're confident to go out and then start reaching out to agents and say, look what I do. And while you're practicing and learning, you're building a portfolio also. Because if you don't have a portfolio and you're contacting agents, they're not going to hire you if you have nothing to show. Yeah. But you can build, when I started out, I shot 3 or 4 images in my own house that ended up in my portfolio, and nobody knows that's my own house except you. Yeah. So, shoot your own house, shoot your neighbor's house, shoot 3 your neighbor's house. And before you know it, you have 15, 20 images in a portfolio. Excellent. You're learning your skill, and you have the confidence to go out and start reaching out to agents and having a variety of images in your portfolio, which might be just your 3 neighbors' houses. Looks like you're busy and you know what you're doing and you have work. So
yeah, that's excellent advice right there. So Brian, Sorry, Rich, can you give us like one golden tip? I know you've already given us lots and lots of tips and tricks there, but what's the one thing that you'd tell someone trying to get started in real estate photography to get down?
Well, pretty much what Brian said. He touched upon really what the same thing I would say. I think you've got to get out there. You've got to really be somewhat gregarious, really get out there, put yourself out there. As Brian says, shoot as much as you can. Shoot your own house. You've got friends that have you can make your own portfolio when you're starting. Remember, don't shoot the same house and use 5 or 6, 7, 8 shots from the same house in your portfolio, because like a wedding photographer, you can tell it's all the same wedding. So they've only done 2 weddings. But you want to get different. You can go to your friends' houses, get those. You can ride your bike down the street, and you can go in a really nice place with nice houses and just go take a camera and take pictures, and don't have to tell anybody. You can sneak shots there. You can hopefully find an open house where you can go in and say, hey, to the agent, you mind if I take some pictures for this? And maybe you could share it with them, which is giving you experience. It's giving you portfolio material, and you might meet an agent at one of these open houses that will give you an opportunity. A lot of people say don't shoot for free. I think Brian and I are both in agreement that we think it's okay to shoot to a point, to shoot for free, because again, you're getting all those things that I just mentioned. But really, I think education, though, whether it's our videos, whether it's my YouTube channel or whatever, find somebody that produces something that you like the way they teach, and learn as much as you can. Facebook has some great groups where you can join. Just put in and search in Google, in Facebook searching engine. You want to just put in real estate photography. You can learn that. Go on YouTube. Besides myself, there are hundreds of people out there teaching you. Some are good, some are not so good, but it is all education. And the bottom line is, you don't know at this point when you're learning, when you're just starting, you don't know what you don't know. So you've got to get as much experience, and then you'll start realizing, oh my gosh, Brian, I remember your first shoot and my first shoot wasn't so great, but we learned what we knew, what we know now, and it just takes time. So, yeah.
Excellent. Well, golden advice from both of you there. You've talked a number of times about your YouTube, Rich, and I understand that you do a podcast together. Tell us about that.
I'll just start off because I don't think we mentioned how Brian and I started the podcast. Well, Brian called me when I was in Australia, and he wanted to have me on as a guest onto his podcast, but he hadn't done a podcast yet, but he was doing his research and getting guests. And it turns out I just said, you know what? I thought about doing a podcast. And then we ended up doing them ourselves. And our podcast is called Shooting Spaces. We agreed that, that is kind of what we're doing. And it had a little catchy name to it. And we didn't know where it would go. Brian is in New York. I'm based out of California, but now I'm doing podcasts down in Mexico. So I'm all over the place, but it's working out great. And I'll leave the ball in your court, Brian. So continue.
Yeah, I mean, you said how we got started. We're about 150 or so episodes in now. We've been doing it 4 years. We release seasons in 12 episode batches. And we do everything from guest interviews to we have an Ask the Guys feature, which is similar to what I saw on your website, Martin, where you allow people to submit questions, and Rich and I go over those questions. We play them live on the air, and either we try to answer them, or if it's something beyond our expertise, we'll bring on a guest who knows more than we do, and we'll try to answer people's questions. But we talk about everything from the business side of real estate photography to the technique side of real estate photography to just interviewing some of the best real estate architectural photographers out there. So it's been good, and it's been a fun ride. And it was, I guess, something we started. We're approaching 4 years now. We released the first one in February 2018. And, it's funny, if you listen back to the first one, we obviously had, probably similar to you, Martin, we had no idea what we were doing, and we sound awful. And we kind of said in the first one, hey, we're just here recording. And if you hear this, that means we liked what we did and we put it out there for you. And then, 150 episodes later, here we are, we're still doing it. So we started with the podcast, and, over the last, I guess, 2 years, Rich, 2.5 years, we've been able to transition the podcast into just creating this educational hub to just educate real estate photographers in a whole variety of different ways. And this is all obviously piggybacking off what Rich does with his YouTube channel, because that's how I learned. And so many people learned from Rich. And what do you have? Probably a couple of hundred videos at this point, Rich, all on real estate photography. But we started doing webinars where we do webinars every couple of months. We'll bring on a guest, whether it's a design photographer or an editor, or, for instance, Rich showed you one of his twilight shots. So we did a webinar with Rich and another guy. His name is Matt Stallone out of Toronto, Canada. And he also does a lot of twilight shots, but they both have two completely different techniques. So we did a webinar showing each of them editing their twilight shots in their different techniques. So there's just a ton of different webinars we do, presets for Lightroom for real estate photographers, just a bunch of different educational material. And then obviously, as we briefly mentioned, just the courses, which we released recently. So we're just, I guess, in it now to spread the love. Rich put in more time than I have as a real estate photographer. I'm only about eight years in or so, but I learned a lot from Rich and other people in the industry. And I felt when I was starting this, I wanted to give back what I learned and help others along the way. So, and I know Rich feels the same way. It's all about giving back and teaching I don't want to say the next generation, because that sounds cheesy, but just, people taught me, so I want to teach other people at this point.
Yeah. When I started my podcast, it was, I started in 2005, and I had a number of people. I remember after the second episode, I had to go on business to Florida. It was before I was doing photography for my, as a business. I had to go to Florida. And while I was there, I was getting these hate mail from people saying, "What are you doing sharing all of your secrets?" And, it's like, it's changed now. I think sharing has become a much easier thing to do. But yeah, I'm totally with you, as in, sharing what you know, because we all got it from somewhere. And even if it's a totally original idea, share it, pass it on, because it's all going to help. Not just you said. There's a Japanese saying that translates basically as, I don't know, benevolence or kindness is not for the sake of the person that you're giving it to. And what they mean by that, the flip side is it helps you to be kind to others. So I'm totally with you there.
I agree wholeheartedly. And there are people. There are two specific photographers that I know of that live within 15 miles of my house that bought my course. So they're ultimately, if you want to consider it, they're kind of my competition. We're going after similar work, and obviously I'm not going to say to them, you can't buy my course. So you have to sort of take this like colleague, not competition approach, where it's all for the betterment of the industry if we're all on the same page. I think when it comes to policies and rates and all this stuff, if we're all come from the same place, I think overall it just brings the industry up.
Yeah. So where can people find your podcast and your courses? Where could people go to get that?
Would you like to go, Rich, or?
Okay. Well, if you want to listen to the podcast and go to the podcast, it's shootingspacespodcast.com. If you're going to go to our educational site, which has got all our webinars, our courses, all our presets, all the things like that, it's shootingspaces.net. My YouTube channel is, all you have to do is Google Rich Baum, Baum, Rich Baum, and you'll find all kinds of stuff out there, and the YouTube channel is, I have 35,000 subscribers now, which is pretty good for real estate. And I tell people, believe it or not, real estate photography, it is a thing. And there's a lot of people that treat it really seriously and want to learn as much. And I just want to close out just saying, more important than gear, than anything, education is just really, really key. And for all of you people out there listening, please, it's sure fun to buy gear, buy tripods, buy lenses, cameras, but it's really important to get the education, and it will help you tenfold. And you can buy a lot more gear when you get better. But however you get your education, it really is super important. So always remember that. And I think a lot of the newer photographers I find are not really as into that as the older ones. But I think that it is something that is a common thing in whatever you're going to do and be successful at.
Yeah.
And did I miss anything, Brian, on any other websites or anything we got?
No, I mean, the podcast is also on all the podcast platforms as well as YouTube. So if besides going to the actual website, if you use, Apple Podcasts, for instance, or Spotify, or just go to YouTube, we actually have all our podcasts are video also. So you can go on, you can watch, you can listen, whatever you want to do.
Okay.
So I understand that you mentioned that you were going to give us a discount code for the course. Have you set that up, Brian?
Yeah, sure. So just to give you, I don't want to spend time talking about this, give you a quick 30-second clarification on what the course is. As you kind of learned from listening to us today, Rich shoots primarily residential real estate, and I shoot primarily commercial real estate. So we decided to put two separate courses together where Rich teaches his entire workflow for residential real estate photography from top to bottom. And my course is commercial real estate from top to bottom. So, if you're the absolute beginner just trying to get into this, Rich's course is the perfect thing because he literally goes down to the basics. And my course is for somebody who I guess is already a residential real estate photographer, or it's, I guess, a kind of a perfect segue once you kind of get your feet wet with residential real estate photography and you want to then take it to the next level, shooting some commercial spaces where, the rates on commercial real estate spaces are anywhere from 3 to 5 times as much as residential. So where you can take the skills you already learned, bring that to commercial and start making, 3 to 5 times as much. So you can anyone can purchase each of the courses individually if they want, or they can save some money by buying the bundle and getting both courses together. But I did set up a discount for 25% off the course, and that's 25% off each individual course or the bundle. So you'll get 25% across the board no matter what you do. And the code is MBP25. So just putting that code in at checkout. And I guess I can send you a link, Martin. Hopefully you can throw that in the show notes or something to the courses directly. And, or if not, it's learn.shootingspaces.net. And then you can get a link to the courses and all our stuff. And they'll get that discount.
That's a very generous discount. Thanks very much for that. It's if anyone is interested, that will be helpful. So thank you very much.
Hopefully.
And Martin, if I can just throw in one more thing too, I want to say, whereas my course is really great if you're a beginner, I want the people out there to know that if you're an experienced, you could be the top of your game at another genre of photography, but this is going to really help you. So it's not a beginner photographer, it's someone just beginning at real estate photography. Mm-hmm. And also, if you're already have an established business and you're doing HDR and you want to learn lighting, or you want to learn more advanced techniques of Photoshop and editing, this is the perfect course for you. And I want to give a little plug for Brian's course that you have a lot of things you're not getting in Brian's course as far as all the basics and stuff like that, because we assume you have it. People should know that going out and shooting the way Brian's teaching you, you don't have to have lights. You don't have to have this incredible knowledge. And it's not something that, even if you're just beginning, you can take advantage of an opportunity if you meet somebody that has commercial real estate opportunities. You can take advantage of it right off the bat. So it's perfect combination for anybody in photography getting into it, or if you've been doing it for a while.
Okay, excellent. So do you have a preferred, if someone wants to actually get in touch with both of you, do you have a preferred way to do that? Are there like contact us links on those sites that you've mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, people can contact us directly that way. The easiest way for me to reach out and connect with people is actually Instagram. So if someone wants to reach out to me, I would say the best thing to do is just DM me on Instagram. That's the quickest way. You know, I always have my phone on me, so I get to that quicker than anywhere else. And my Instagram is Brian Berko. So my name without the WITZ at the end. So just Brian Berko. That's probably the easiest way for someone to reach out to me.
Excellent.
And for me, it's really, a great resource is I have several groups in Facebook. I have Twilight Photography for Real Estate. I've got Real Estate Photography with Lights. I've got Rich Baum's Tips and Tricks for Real Estate Photography Facebook group. So you can reach out there, and I'm always involved in people's questions and things like that. Or you can send me an email at rich@richbaum.com, and that's as simple as that. I'm always happy to reach out and help. And also, if you're on my YouTube channel, I try to answer all my comments in person, so that's another way to get answers right out there. But I'm very accessible, and I, as you had mentioned earlier, I love giving and I love what I do. So I'm always happy to help.
Well, they're recipes for success right there. So it's been an incredible over an hour, just coming up to an hour and 10 minutes. So thank you for your time. I realize that it's almost Christmas. So Merry Christmas to the both of you.
Same to you.
Yeah, it's going to be another Japanese Christmas for me here. It's actually Christmas Eve today because I live in the future. But so really, thanks very much for your time this evening, gentlemen. And it's been a blast. Thank you very much, and we'll hopefully get a chance to do this again at some time.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It's been fun.
Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. You can find the links that we mentioned during the conversation at mbp.ac/764. Thanks very much for listening today. If you enjoy this podcast, please share a link with your friends. Consider supporting the podcast on Patreon, which comes with various tiers and benefits depending on your contribution. Although all tiers provide access to the full blog posts for more than 760 episodes, as well as access to our MVP community. For further details, check out our Patreon page at mbp.ac/Patreon. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, and links to everything that I'm up to are at martinbaileyphotography.com, so do drop by and take a look. I'll be back next week with another episode, but in the meantime, a Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays to you. Take care and have a great week, whatever you're doing. Bye-bye.